Well, earlier today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with President Obama for the first time in over a year. The visit comes as tensions have been rising between Israeli security forces and Palestinians in Jerusalem. Yet despite the critical importance of the meeting and its content, much of the mainstream media seemed focused on Netanyahu's and Obama's body language and their awkward handshake, like it was a People magazine segment. Well, luckily for you, RT correspondent Alexei Yeroshovsky has the latest on what went on at the meeting and its significance, if any, for furthering the Israeli-Palestinian peace process.
Now, the meeting between Benjamin Netanyahu and President Obama has concluded in Washington, D.C., and maybe a good indicator that these talks were not easy ones was the fact that the conversation lasted for 45 minutes longer than it was originally scheduled. Now, obviously, the Iranian deal and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, those were the main issues of the talks. As far as we know, not a lot has been said. After the meeting, again, what subjects were discussed. Definitely relations have been frosty, especially in the last 12 months or so. And one of the missions of Netanyahu here in Washington, D.C. is, of course, to defrost those relationships. But another one, a more important one, is to ask for more money from the United States. Now, we know that Israel has been receiving around $3 billion worth of military aid every year from the United States. Now, some analysts are suggesting that Netanyahu is here to ask for $5 billion a year. In fact, this is stipulated in a memorandum of understanding between the two countries, which is expiring in 2017. And before that deal expires, Netanyahu wants more funding in the times what he describes as very sort of violent and volatile in the region.
Just 2 weeks ago, the website HowMuch.net released a map of countries which receive U.S. economic foreign aid scaled to size. Who topped the list? As you guessed it, and as Alexei mentioned, Israel, with $3.1 billion in economic aid. Rounding out the top 5 were all countries in the Mideast or Central Asia, areas considered hotspots for U.S. global foreign policy. Egypt received $1.5 billion, Afghanistan $1.1 billion, Jordan $1 billion, and Pakistan just over $900 million. Africa was the region which received the most, with countries like Mozambique, South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya receiving anywhere between $400 and $700 million. Interestingly, Southeast Asia received a great deal less in foreign aid, where Bangladesh received $200 million and Vietnam about $120 million. Finally, in the Western Hemisphere, Mexico and Colombia topped the list with about $200 and $320 million, respectively.
Wow.
A lot of money.
Wow, we are giving out a lot of money, just handing it over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now when you look at something like this, are we handing the money over to better the countries, to get them, give them more help, give them more, more stability, things like that? Or are we really handing the money over just to buy political influence or keep the arms dealers in business? Because it seems like a lot of this money is also military based.
Which is why I think there's, where the media got wrong about covering this entire thing, worrying about like, oh, well, this was how his handshake was. Good journalism. While they did the media might have sort of gone easy on him, activists really haven't, which was the good part. And as we're speaking, up to I think 38 faith-based and social justice organizations are protesting here in Washington and beyond to this theme of no U.S. tax dollars to Israel. So they're protesting giving money to that until there's some sort of reason. What you're saying is it going to good? Is it going to medical? Are we building hospitals? Are we building schools? Are we making places? Are we giving them sanitation? Are we giving them proper roads? Things they need to have stable environments? No, we're giving it to military aid, which to me is different than giving foreign aid. Foreign aid and military aid should be two different things. They should be under two different bills, and they should be approved differently.
And then very quickly, the argument that economic aid corresponds to the need of the people in a country is immediately false if you look at like Israel, who's the #1 recipient, where people basically have a Western industrial standard of living compared to almost every other single nation that receives aid. It's very interesting when you look at that they receive the most. Sean, what do you make of this?
Well, just to give context, obviously, it seems like a lot of money that we're giving out. Actually, it only amounts to about 1% of our national budget every year. So it's proportionally not that large and huge an amount. But yes, obviously, billions of dollars does add up, and it makes you wonder. For example, in Israel, most of the aid seems to be going to the financial sectors. It makes you wonder, well, why do we need to continue to prop up Israel at this point. I know historically we were very much involved in financing and protecting Israel, but why at this point, when Israel, as you mentioned, is at basically our standard of living, why do they still need our aid? Makes you wonder how much does that have to do with the overall arms trade with the country, and obviously defense and defense services. Then you go to other countries. You mentioned there is the military angle. There's also the issue of putting money into so-called healthcare and education, but without an overall strategy, without a Marshall Plan to actually focus on where the money is going to go, to actually drive the economy, to actually provide for infrastructure. It does seem to be more of political influence than anything that's driving this foreign aid package.
Couldn't agree more, Sean. Couldn't agree more. Great comments. All right. Woo. Hoo-hoo. Sometimes, when life gets tough, you just need a mom to make things better.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism